This is The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com. Episode 179, recorded October 27th, 2018. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime at The Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So, today, as usual, we are going to be talking about The Good Place. We're going to be talking about the episode The Ballad of Donkey Doug. Before that, we're going to cover a few news stories, so let's just kind of get into that now. First up in the news, Netflix has renewed Disenchantment, the Matt Groening animated fantasy series comedy on their service. They gave it a 2-season renewal, so we won't be left with that cliffhanger that we had.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super happy about this, obviously, because I enjoyed the first season, and I can't wait for more of it, especially after that cliffhanger. I think it's not quite there yet, but there's definite potential for it to become great. So
yeah, it's just kind of coming into its own. So it'll be nice to see it continue and what it can do now that it's kind of a little bit more developed, now that we kind of like know more of the characters and are a little bit more invested, and now that there's kind of like this serialized story that's kind of come to its fruition. Now we can kind of see where things are moving with it. That can make it kind of interesting to watch. So that's good news. Unfortunately, some bad news on Netflix. They canceled American Vandal after 2 seasons.
And that second season was pretty amazing too. So this is probably like the first Netflix cancellation I'm actually like really bummed about.
Yeah, I mean, the Iron Fist one, we were a little bummed just because it just finally became what Iron Fist should have been like in the epilogue of the last season, and then it was canceled. It's like, wait, but now we're never going to get the actual Iron Fist series we wanted from the beginning.
Right. That
was bad, but I mean, the series was so bad before that, the first season and stuff, I mean, right off the bat. That
much of an attachment there.
Yeah, exactly. And then Luke Cage was a little disappointing, but, you know, it's the same thing. Like, it's kind of like, I wasn't necessarily excited.
I wasn't, necessarily, super invested, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the main thing from those stories that it just started making us nervous about Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Punisher and, if they were just going to start slowly canceling off all of them. But that's, we didn't really have too much investment in those actual series. There have been a few other, I think, Netflix kind of cancellations that I haven't been too happy about, but nothing that's really been like, oh man, this is what the hell, And American Vandal is it. It's interesting because the show's gotten almost nothing but critical praise. I just don't think enough people knew about it,
Right.
It just has to do with, I guess, the way Netflix kind of doesn't really advertise their shows that much. I mean, they advertise their really big ones. They advertise House of Cards and stuff. I see billboards for those when we go out to Los Angeles and stuff. But, for the most part, in Stranger Things they advertise. But for the most part, they don't really advertise much of their stuff. And even if they did, I don't think people would really necessarily, at least from a billboard, really catch on to what it really is,
Right.
So I think that's probably it. There was a graph that came out when Iron Fist and Luke Cage were canceled where they were showing social media attention towards the series. Before the first season aired, when the first season was airing, after it, and then as it went into the second season. And you could see this huge drop off on Luke Cage from the first season to the second. And since Netflix doesn't actually release their ratings, their data on how many people are watching, that's the best example we can use as far as how interested people are in that show. So that's kind of what you can use to make sense of it and go okay, well, Netflix saw the first season, it did well for them, and then that dropped off pretty quick, and then the second season dropped off very quickly and never really got that high of attention. So you could see Netflix going oh, I don't know if we want to do anything with this. I have no idea what happened with American Vandal, though. Like, we don't really have any data on that, obviously, from Netflix, and we don't have any social data really either to show what the reaction.
I guess we can extrapolate that. The ratings of viewership was lower than Netflix wanted, and they canceled it.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, because I think that that's like the kind of show that is like a great catalog show. It's going to sit there, and then people will discover it, and they'll fall in love with it when they discover it, you know? But hey, 2 seasons was good. And the other good news about this is that almost immediately after it was canceled, apparently the creators of the show were getting contacted by other services and channels. This is produced by CBS TV Studios, which might also play a part in why it was canceled, because it makes it kind of like not full ownership for Netflix. There's a recent thing going on. There's like a tribalism going on with like streaming services right now, where they're giving priority to shows that are produced in-house, like completely made by them, where they don't have to like shell out money to anybody else. It's completely theirs. And American Vandal is completely Netflix's as far as ownership, but they have to be paying on that as they make new seasons and stuff to another studio. And so you could say like that maybe this is part of the reason for it, why it got canceled, is just because they didn't have full ownership of it. They weren't making all of the profit from it. So it becomes like a less valuable proposition for them. It's the reason why, say, for example, the CW, like all the Arrowverse shows and stuff, those are all made by the CW. So they're going to do really well for them. On the other hand, you know, if CW airs something that's made by, say, Fox, you know, even if it does better than the stuff that they make themselves, it might be less profitable because it's made by another studio and then licensed to them.
Right.
So there's that possibility as well. The one benefit of this, though, the fact that it's made by a different studio, is that it could be picked up by somebody else, because now that Netflix has passed on it, they can go elsewhere. So ironically, it could show up on CBS All Access.
Good, ironically.
Because they have their own like individual streaming service now, or it could show up on Amazon or Hulu. I think those might be a little bit less likely, just because it's, like I said, it's the tribalism thing. Like they're not going to own it, and they're coming in on a 3rd season, and ratings deplete season to season usually on shows like these. So it's going to make it like a less of a worthwhile investment for one of these streaming services. But for CBS, since they already own it, it could end up being actually a pretty smart play for them, because it's right now their service is basically just like Star Trek when it's on. Like, which Star Trek show do we have now? And that's all that the CBS service is. So taking something that already has kind of critical acclaim from another service might actually be a smart move for them.
Right. Yeah, definitely. We'll have to see what happens there.
Yeah. Hopefully something good's around the corner there, because it's a great show. Next up, we have Netflix is going to raise $2 billion in debt. They're doing this so that they can make more original content. So what's interesting here is that we've just been seeing Netflix canceling stuff left and right. Of course, Netflix also makes a ton of content, so, and continues to create tons and tons of
They got canceled
shows.
things to make room for the tons more shows they plan to create, right?
Yeah, but this is Netflix going outside of their revenue in order to create more original content. They're actually taking on debt. So does this mean we're going to see like another massive push? Because already it's pretty dizzying, you know? Or does it mean that
I think
we're going
that's
to get
exactly what it
quality?
means.
There's 2 things we could see. One is that we're just going to see even more tons of Netflix shows coming out. Like right now we're getting like 5 a week or something. Maybe we're going to start getting 7 a week. And it's just going to keep escalating like that. But the other possibility is that they might start investing more in the shows they're making. Amazon is basically taking that tack. Like, Amazon isn't releasing content anywhere nearly as fast as Netflix is. But if you look at some of the content they have coming up, like the Lord of the Rings series and the 3 Body Problem, which is the one based on that Chinese novel series, that they bought the rights to that Chinese novel series for like $1 billion just for the rights. And Lord of the Rings one was like $500 million just for the rights. So, and they already said that the productions on those are going to match that. They're going to be like ridiculously expensive productions as well. So with Amazon investing in like really expensive productions like that to really garner a lot of attention, Netflix, like their shows don't really necessarily show up as being super expensive. You know, like you don't really see a Netflix show and go, oh man, this looks expensive, like you would if you saw Game of Thrones or Westworld or something.
Right,
you know?
right. We don't see there's no elaborate productions like that on Netflix that you can really point to.
But that being said, if you look at what Netflix has coming up, I mean, they got The Witcher coming up.
Yeah.
They're taking on a lot of sci-fi shows, and sci-fi can be pretty expensive if it's done right, you know? So,
if it's done right and not done cheap like the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah. But I mean, using Sci-Fi Channel as an example, I mean, The Expanse was like an expensive show, you know, and Sci-Fi ran that for, I believe, 4 seasons, or no, 3 seasons.
Until they canceled it and Amazon swoop in and pick it up. And you gotta realize, Sci-Fi canceled The Expanse because they're like basically canceling like all their premium dramas that they invested in like just several years ago. And when you thought they were making a comeback and they were just like, psych, more garbage. Let's cancel all this now.
Yeah, it's the expensive stuff wasn't working out for them and the returns that they had hoped for.
Right, exactly.
I think they realize that everything's moving towards streaming. So if you're doing an expensive show, like the only channel that can really get away with making like a super expensive show right now is probably HBO. And then everybody else, they have to like rely on streaming. And if they don't own their own streaming service, then it's just not worth it for them. So hence The Expanse getting canceled and picked up by Amazon, and hence why you're seeing like massive budget shows going into production at Amazon, and, you know, shows like The Witcher being picked up by Netflix. And so we'll have to see what this means. If Netflix is going to, you know, take on a huge step up in quality of their shows, like in the production budgets, or if they're going to just kind of pump out more shows, just tons more shows, because they are canceling a lot too, which kind of makes it a little strange. So yeah, that's Netflix. Our last story and our most controversial one is that I should preface it by saying that if you haven't followed the controversy already, there's the character of Apu in The Simpsons.
Like really follow it because I thought it was pretty stupid to begin with, but yeah.
So there's the character of Apu in The Simpsons who's like he's an Indian character. He's very stereotypical. It's to the point now where, you know, from the era in which he came onto the show, it wasn't really considered offensive by most people, like, you know, or people in the majority, I guess, or maybe just people that are white like us that didn't see anything offensive in it, because everything in cartoons was kind of about exaggerating things like that. But recently there's been a lot of controversy about the Apu character, and people have called the Apu character out. An example would be like Aziz Ansari, who's done it in his comedy and called out the Apu character as being like kind of a horrible representation of Indians. But the real one that's come up is there is a documentary that came out, The Problem with Apu, by Hari Kondabolu. This is made this documentary in 2017, The Problem with Apu. It was talking about all the kind of cultural issues and the kind of like racism and stuff involved in his character and the depiction of Indians, all the stereotypes and stuff, and how it gave kind of like a negative impression for Indian audiences watching. This got picked up on social media. It spread all over the place. The Simpsons finally decided to address it very poorly with an episode in which Lisa was having trouble dealing with some kind of a similar issue. I didn't watch the episode, so it's hard for me to kind of reiterate what happened, but the scene is well known. It was criticized heavily because it ended with Lisa seeing a picture of Apu that was signed by him that she had that said, "Don't have a cow, man." And like the whole idea was like, it's not a big deal. And this really offended people that were like having a problem with this character and really kind of made things even worse. And then you had like, you know, the Simpsons creator Matt Groening piped in and was saying like, this is stupid. This isn't an issue that we should even be addressing. There's nothing wrong here. That the stereotypes are just used as like as a kind of caricature, and that all the characters are based on that. But people weren't really happy with that. So the news now is that The Simpsons is dropping the Apu character. character. And the news came out because of a producer, not for The Simpsons, but just another TV producer named Adi Shankar, who, if you've been watching the Netflix Castlevania series, he's the guy that produces that. He also did the bootleg universe, if you've seen, like, you know, the R-rated Power Rangers trailer on YouTube or things like that. Like, that's all from Adi Shankar. He proposed a solution where he crowdsourced it and had people basically, he said, okay, he did some kind of a contest, and he said he wants people to create the perfect script on how to deal with the Apu problem. Not to just get rid of the character, but how do you, like, readdress the character? How do you make either a change in the character or create a storyline that addresses why the character is this stereotype or brings up the problem? Basically, like, how do we fix the Apu problem? And he crowdsourced it with this contest. It's completely unofficial because he doesn't work on The Simpsons, but he is in the industry. So he has contacts with other people and some people that are in The Simpsons, and he was contacted by a producer on The Simpsons who said, no, we're just dropping the Apu character. He's going to be gone.
Which is so fucking stupid and tone deaf.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is dumb. I mean, this is actually more harmful than having Apu as he is, in my opinion. Because your answer is like, oh, this character, let's just make the show less diverse. For no, like, what? Just like, fix the problems with the character. Like, that's literally all you have to do. I don't know. I'm guessing that the writers of The Simpsons currently aren't clever enough to fix the character. So this is what they're gonna do. I mean, the show is pretty bad.
So here's what's depressing. Adi Shankar had that contest, as I mentioned.
And none of the writers of The Simpsons won.
The grand prize winner is a man named Vishal. I can't pronounce the name, so I'm not even gonna try. It looks like Butch or something, but I don't know. Anyways, he's a family doctor in Bethesda, Maryland. He wrote the script that won, and in this script, the idea is, and I'm reading this from IndieWire.com, so I can source that. So it says, in Bush's script, Apu goes from a single store owner to a thriving businessman in Springfield. The spec episode doesn't just focus on Apu, but pulls in other prominent Indian Americans in hilarious ways to highlight the importance of diversity and individuality through the lens of The Simpsons.
Oh, I would actually watch that episode, and I haven't watched Simpsons in years. I'm not watching whatever the fuck is actually airing. I haven't watched The Simpsons in a long time. That sounds like a great idea, but again, the people actually writing the show aren't that clever, so that's not their solution.
Here's Shankar's comments about the script that won his contest. As he said, again, this is on IndieWire.com. The contest was never meant to be an attack against anyone, but I think in a lot of ways we weren't asking for anything too radical than to be viewed in 3 dimensions. I think the beauty of Vishal's script is it did just that. It wasn't preachy. It wasn't hammering us over the head. When a lot of people hear the problem with Apu, they roll their eyes. There is no problem with Apu. It's these millennials. They're out of control. I think in a lot of ways, those people will really like this episode. So this is what could have been if this had been picked up, if The Simpsons had reached out to Adi Shankar as he was doing this contest, this completely unofficial contest, or if they just had enough creativity or diversity in the writer's room, honestly, enough to come up with a better solution.
Yeah, I bet that writer's room was just like a bunch of white guys decided we'll just get rid of Apu.
You just walk in the door and you're like, I'm blind. It's just that white everywhere.
Yeah. We'll just get rid of Apu. Problem solved.
Yeah.
Like, not really. You just made it worse.
Yeah. So depressing news.
Yeah.
But it's not going to affect me too much. Just
doesn't affect me.
I'm done with The Simpsons.
I haven't watched Simpsons in years. It's been garbage for
I did when we were at TV Enthusiast. I did a top 10 not episodes but individual segments of Treehouse of Horror for Halloween. It was 3 years ago or something. I did this.
There's a reason I only quote Simpsons from the 90s.
Yeah. And I had to go through and I said, okay, well, in order to do this list fairly, I'm going to watch all of the Treehouse of Horror episodes that I haven't seen. So I went through, and thankfully at the time they had that FXX deal so you could watch them all on their streaming. So I went through and watched every single Treehouse of Horror up to that point. And man, they fucking sucked. It was painful. It was like, man, I thought that at least they'd be able to pull something together for Treehouse of Horror. You know, they're one episode a year. That's really kind of like a big tradition. And it's like, nope, that went way downhill too. Everything was pretty horrible. So I think that there was like one skit from there that I ended up putting in my list from like the last 10 years. Everything else was earlier. So yeah. Simpsons, I don't know why I continued. That show just needs to end, I think. It's kind of sad because it's like an institution, but it's just like now that even The Simpsons is courting controversy and it's not even good anymore. Like people aren't even really watching it anymore and it's still courting controversy. It's like at this point, just kind of end it and don't let it go out in disgrace or something, you know?
Right. Yeah. Just like for real. Like,
it's, you know, if you want to continue it, here's an idea, you know, take your time and do like a Simpsons 1 hour special once a year. Seriously, do like a Christmas special. Like a bunch of shows do Christmas specials and they put like a little bit more attention into them or something. Do something like that. Do a Christmas special or like, you know, Treehouse of Horror maybe. Just make it a Halloween special. Nobody's doing that, you know? And just do it like once a year. It's like a special event. I think you'd actually get a lot of people that have stopped watching The Simpsons would come back for that.
I feel like
like they still have Treehouse of Horror continuing as this individual thing, but people stopped watching The Simpsons so they don't come back. But I think there's a psychological trick.
I feel like The Simpsons is just gonna go on for eternity in like its current form. It's
just really bad.
Yeah, just really bad. But like it's there. It's an institution at this point.
I still feel like there's like a psychological trick.
It's funny because like I don't watch the show and I don't like, you know, I think it's been terrible for a long time, but yeah, I get this like strange like feeling of comfort knowing that it's still on. It's still there.
And I think that's the way it is for a lot of people. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think there's a psychological trick they can play if they get rid of the show, but like bring it back once a year. Like I said, like an hour-long special once a year. And I think you'd actually get more viewers than are actually just watching the show if you did that, because there's that psychological trick of like, oh, I don't have to watch all of this abysmal Simpsons. And at the same time, you have the quality control of having like only one episode where you can really focus all your comedy in on. And I think you'd end up with a better result. And you just get like one episode every year, checking back in on The Simpsons, making like, you know, using some kind of humor from that. It's just like a special that happens once a year. I think that would work. But yeah, Simpsons as an ongoing show is just, now it's courting controversy, and that's, you know, do you want this to go out the way the Cosby Show did, you know, where like you can't even watch the Cosby Show and we're never going to see the Cosby Show in syndication. It's not going to be on any streaming services.
Nope.
That show's gone forever because of the controversy. Like, are you going to let like the changing times affect controversy so much on The Simpsons and not address things properly to the point that
I don't think
it's a show that's not paid attention to that is actively
you're talking about like you're talking about like you're comparing it to the Cosby Show, but you're talking about like Simpsons doing dumb tone deaf shit to like Bill Cosby being an actual like rapist.
I'm taking it a bit far for sure, but what I'm saying, my point is that at this point, like nobody's watching The Simpsons, and yet everybody's talking about The Simpsons, but only in negativity.
Right.
Like, is it worth it at this point?
That's why I like Seinfeld, you know, that Jerry Seinfeld ended, because he could have gone on with Seinfeld for more than 9 seasons. I mean, NBC was like, they really didn't want him to cancel the show.
Yeah.
And he just said no, he wanted to go out while the show was still good, while people had good memories of the show, and not like after the show became bad and like people like started talking about like, oh, like the bad seasons of Seinfeld or something. He didn't like want that. So he wanted to end the show while things were good so that when people look back at a show and remembered it, they'd have nothing but fond memories,
Yeah.
And they should have done
Simpsons,
that.
I think a lot of people still do look back with fond memories. I think it's almost
people look
unfair.
back at the early seasons, like nobody talks about
Well, I think, but that's the thing is that people just stopped watching The Simpsons, and so I think to most people, they know The Simpsons is on, but in their minds, it's been over for a decade plus.
Right.
So they think about those fond seasons. They don't even have a clue of what's going on in the current seasons. So they think back fondly because they're in those old seasons in their mind when they think about it.
I certainly don't. If they did this, if they removed Apu and nobody reported it, he just stopped showing up on a show, I would never know. Yeah. I would never know that,
Exactly. If it didn't court controversy, there'd be no news about the show.
Right.
And there's news about the show only because it courted controversy. So that's what I'm saying. It's if the only news you're getting is your controversy, then maybe it's time to hang it up,
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been time to hang it up. Especially, and you can tell, Matt Groening has certainly moved on. He's doing Disenchanted now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think, time to hang it up. They should just let Futurama take over for The Simpsons and then, moved on.
Yeah, and I think people look back more fondly on Futurama just because it continued to be good throughout its whole run.
Right.
And it had a shorter run, but I've said this before and I'll say it again,
shorter run compared to The Simpsons, massive, run that,
yeah.
No other entertainment can ever hope to achieve that kind of run.
But what I'll say is that The Simpsons has been bad for longer than it's been good.
Right, exactly.
And that's kind of sad. That's a sad legacy for the show to have. In 100 years, when people go, what were the really popular shows, and people look back at The Simpsons, and if they just pick an episode to watch completely at random, there's more bad episodes than good now. They'll end up on a bad episode randomly, and they'll say, why did people like this shit? Yeah, and that's kind of sad if you think about it. If you just randomly pick an episode of The Simpsons, it's probably going to be a bad episode.
I still can't believe I was 8 years old when that show premiered. Now I'm 37.
Yeah.
So this show has been on for almost 30 years. That's insane.
Yeah. Let's move on, though, past the news. That was our last news stories. Let's talk about The Good Place. This is our active discussion we always have. So today we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 5 or 6, depending on how you define it. I don't really care. Titled The Ballad of Donkey Doug.
You know what? Season 5, Season 4, Season whatever, it's not a straight line. It's a Jeremy Bearimy.
Yeah. The Good Place, episode number I.
Yes.
The Ballad of Donkey Doug.
The Ballad of Donkey Doug. And bonus points, if you haven't watched the episode, bonus points for guessing who Donkey Doug is without us telling you first. Because you'll never guess. He's
appeared before. He was in an episode this season, in the flashback episode where they showed, or not flashback, where it was actually, well, it kind of was. It was when Jason was explaining how his time went after he was saved, when he was supposed to have died, and how he started a dance crew, and how his dance crew fell apart, and it showed Donkey Doug quitting his dance crew.
Yeah.
And he said, "No, you're my boy."
Yeah.
But this is really lame. So I'm gonna get out of here. And he left and then tried to carjack, disqualified the team because he tried to carjack the judges or something.
Yeah. And he's mentioned Donkey Doug before too, but we never.
Yeah, he's mentioned him a lot, but this is the first time we saw him was this season, and
we never knew the relationship until this episode.
Yeah, which adds a whole twist to it. And if you look back at certain things and you with that kind of lens, it kind of adds a lot of a sad story to Jason's life.
Does.
And this
also
is his father.
Explains how Jason is the way he is. Explains a lot. Yeah.
That's the twist, is that Donkey Doug, and this happens early in the episode, Donkey Doug is his dad.
Yeah, Donkey Doug is Jason's father.
It makes a lot of sense. You see the two of them next to each other, the way they talk, everything, there's a lot of commonalities. You can see how Jason's kind of modeled himself after Donkey Doug, after this figure in his life.
And he doesn't, and that's another thing, he doesn't call his dad, he calls his dad Donkey Doug.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what, It's messed up. And then there's like the scene where Donkey Doug is like explaining it. He's like, he's my boy, but he's also my boy.
Yeah.
He's my son, but he's also my son.
Yeah, this kind of came as a shock to Tahani and Michael, who were kind of like, oh, what? Like, he's your dad? This Donkey Doug you've been talking about this whole time? And we should bring up the reason why
the reason why
on Jason and Donkey Doug.
Well, the reason why is because after the ending of last episode, everybody concluded that instead of like trying to save themselves and get themselves in a good place, because that is proven to be hopeless at this point, they decided instead that they're going to help other people get into the good place, starting with their loved ones. And so this is why Jason is back in Jacksonville, Florida, trying to help his dad, because his dad is a person badly in need of help if he's going to get into the good place.
Yes. So he's going basically to save his dad, to try to like curb his life in the right direction. And the plan is that they're going to try to get him back into electrical engineering, which is something that he had like somewhat of a talent for.
Which
and
I am surprised, because you have to really be intelligent to do that. But
some people have skills, even if they're not necessarily like, you wouldn't think that they're smart. Like they kind of, it comes intuitively to them, you know, like they have a certain knack.
They have a certain knack for things. Instead of going back and finishing his degree in electrical engineering, Donkey Doug wants to sell body spray and energy drink
combination,
mixed as one thing.
As like a single product. That's the thing he wants to do. He wants to put it together by robbing two factories: a body spray factory. Well, he says it two first: a body spray factory and an energy drink, and then we'll put them in bottles. Oh shit, we got to rob a third factory.
And then Jason's talking to like Michael. And Jason is like, Michael's like, this is bad. And then Jason's like, I know, I was down with like robbing 2 factories, but 3 factories?
So Jason wants to stop this. He's trying to get his dad in there, but at this point, Michael and Tahani are both kind of trying to address him and say, have you thought about the possibility that he might be a lost cause? That this is not something that's you're going to be able to make a change in his life. And this pushes him towards, instead of trying to save his dad, trying to save
his best friend, Pillboy.
Yes. Who we find out where his name comes from is that he works at a retirement home and he administers pills.
Oh, we already knew this. It's like, it's been mentioned before that that's his job.
What we didn't know is that he's actually kind of good at his job.
Yeah.
Like, he actually kind of shows a lot of compassion for the elderly residents he works with.
Yeah, he works with. He's actually, like, competent at his job, which, again, surprising because he's incredibly stupid. Like, to the point where, like, he tells his coworker at his job that he has to bail early to go rob a factory.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is just coworkers, are looking at him incredulously as he's doing. So they end up being able to try to put his life on track in a way that I don't know if it necessarily makes sense in the context of the show, because the whole point is that if they have to be doing it for the right reasons. That's kind of like the context that the show always has about earning points for the good place. And the way they end up getting him to do it is by kind of tricking him by saying that they're agents from NASA, which is like, okay, like, what would that have anything to do with this? But that, they have a top secret assignment for him and he has to just stay at the retirement home, continue to work his job, don't do crime anymore, and be helpful and kind to the people at the retirement home.
Yeah. That's their plan to save Pillboy.
And that's, and he buys it because it's NASA.
Meanwhile, Donkey Doug goes to rob the factory. He gets caught, and Jason's there, and he ends up he ends up letting the cops, like, distracting the cops and letting Jason escape.
Mm-hmm.
After Jason has, like, you know, like a real father-son moment with his dad.
Well, letting Jason escape is like the first and only kind of fatherly thing he's ever done.
Right.
It's kind of like he says that his father did it for him and that his father's father did it for his father. And so it's like a tradition.
And then he's like, and then someday you'll do it for your son. And then Jason's like, I hope not.
So it's like the one fatherly streak that Donkey Doug is showing and everything he's done here is the compassion to kind of take a fall for his son. And so it's just kind of, it's a sad story told in a really funny way.
Yeah, it is.
So it's a sad story that you see kind of like why Jason's life is the way it is and why Jason is the way he is. You see kind of like the root of that, but at the same time, it's told in such a funny way that you're cracking up through the whole thing.
Oh yeah, just because like the character is bonkers. But
we'll talk about stuff unrelated to Donkey Doug, but before we leave Jacksonville, Florida, we have to bring up a Jacksonville, Florida taxi.
Oh yeah, which is like a monster truck
that comes in smashing a car.
Yes.
At the airport when they call for a taxi. He's all, I gotta call for a taxi, and you just see a monster truck rip up and run over a car. And you're like, what the hell? And then it's like, that's the taxi. But that's pretty much it is there anything else that you want to talk about in relation to the Jacksonville storyline?
I think we covered it all.
So that was kind of the main focus of the episode. So besides that, the main thing that's going on is that Chidi wants to break up his relationship with Simone because he feels like he's going to hold secrets.
Well, it's because he has to, because he wants to go off, you know, and help Eleanor and Tahani and Jason, Michael, like, save souls, right? Like, he's on the mission. And also,
but it's beyond that, because they even
notes that he has, like, he has free time because, university fired him after his freak out last episode.
Yeah. He's like, good news. He's like, I got the free time I needed. Oh, they granted it? Yes, they fired me.
But yeah, it's also that, like, he knows the secrets of the universe, and now he feels like he has to leave Simone.
Part of that is also, it's not just the fact that he has to go off on this mission, it's that he knows he can't hold a secret, he can't keep a secret.
Right.
It's something he's not good at, it's something he feels is ethically wrong, so it hurts him trying to do it, and he doesn't feel he's going to be able to keep Simone in the dark about the whole point system for the universe. And if he can't keep her in the dark and she knows, then she'll be disqualified from earning good place points.
That's true, yes.
And so he'll be damning her.
He doesn't want to damn her.
Yeah, so he decides, I can't damn her. I need to break up in order not to damn her. And the solution they come up with for this, because Chidi, of course, is just horrible with this kind of thing. Trying to break up with somebody.
He's horrible at, like, making a decision and going through with it.
Yeah.
Like, this is a pretty stressful decision he has to make and execute on. And
so Janet ends up kind of creating like a virtual reality machine.
I love what Janet said. So Janet suggests to Chidi, she goes, why don't I create a virtual reality simulation and you can run through all the scenarios? And Chidi's like, you can do that? And she's like, yeah, I know everything about you. I know everything about Simone. I know everything about computer programming and virtual reality and the human brain and everything. And she says, I'm kind of a nerd.
She also says at one point, which is kind of funny, that, you know, like, oh, when you go in, you might see Jason dressed in a 1920s strongman outfit. Like, just ignore that.
I like how she says all that stuff and just nonchalantly, I'm kind of a nerd.
So they create this virtual reality scene where Chidi's able to go into a restaurant and confront his girlfriend and kind of come up with different ways to break up with her to see kind of how they work. And so he tries, like, you know, the best one, you know, he tries all these different ways of, like, breaking it up, like, you know, outright, or breaking up in a cold way, breaking up kind of like in a, like, I have to go kind of way, like trying all these different ways. The best one was the puppy method, where he's like, like, he's like, I have to break up with you, but here's a puppy. And it's just because I have to go, so I can't be with you anymore. And isn't he soft? And the whole time she's like, Simone's like, wait, you know you can't just like cover up that you're breaking up with me by constantly bringing a puppy up.
Yeah, right.
And then he just keeps...
in that like simulation is hilarious. The best part of the simulation though is when Chidi puts Eleanor in it. And then, and because Eleanor's like, geez, how hard can this be, Chidi? Seriously. So she gets in the simulation.
Like, do you want me to break up for you?
And he's like, yes. So she gets in the simulation and she's like, and then like she's talking to, Simone and then she's just like, oh damn, what's happening right now? And then she goes in to make out with Simone and Chidi pulls her out of the simulation. And Eleanor's like, oh damn, it was just getting good.
This also kind of ties back into when they first mentioned the simulation thing that, and that they'd be able to do that. Eleanor was like, can you whip up something with like, what was it? I think it was Vin Diesel and, like this weird fetishistic idea she had. And Janet's like,
and Janet's like, what is with humans and wanting to use every new invention for porn?
I was just like we're disgusting.
Yeah, Eleanor's just like, yeah, we're disgusting.
But yeah, they had that, and then the funny thing of Janet kind of embracing the idea of being a personal assistant by kind of taking a cue from Amazon Alexa and Google Home.
Yeah. I like how Janet like just walks over and she just goes Bing.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I said Bing because in The Good Place I would just like pop in with a Bing sound, but I don't have my powers here, so.
So she kept using Bing every time she like entered or left, and then the one time she said Bing as she was leaving, and they were like looking at her, and she was trying to like walk away, and she thought, "Don't look at me, it's embarrassing."
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it for the episode. I don't even remember how they resolved the situation with Larry Hemsworth showing up at the end of last episode.
Resolve it because we see in Jacksonville we see Tahani with an Us Weekly with the cover story being like Tahani breaks up with
Larry Hemsworth.
With Larry Hemsworth, yeah.
Yeah.
And then she says something like, she says something like, yeah, she says, if you love someone, set them free.
So yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's the episode as a whole, I believe. That's kind of what we got from it.
That's not the entire episode.
Oh, what else am I forgetting?
Oh, you are forgetting the cliffhanger where they're trying to decide whose soul to save next, and then that's when Eleanor mentions that both of her parents are dead, and then Janet has news. Yeah, then Janet mentions that Eleanor's mom is actually alive.
And that she'd faked her death.
And she faked her death. So that's when Eleanor decides that the next person they're going to visit is her mom.
See, that's interesting because we already did the Ballad of Donkey Doug, and now we're going to explore Eleanor's mom. So what they're doing now is they're tackling the parents of these characters.
Yes.
And the kind of ideas like how you're nurtured into what you are, and like what makes you what you are, and how you can I guess learn forgiveness in the sense that, I mean, like Jason was never angry at his dad, but like you can see in the thing there's an underlying sadness that comes out that you weren't aware of before about the fact that Donkey Doug wasn't kind of a real father to him. There's never a moment where he's like accusatory towards his father or anything, where he's like, you weren't a real dad. Why weren't you a real dad? Or there's nothing like that. Nothing obvious like that. It's just kind of like the idea you're exposed to a kind of sadness that's deep inside him about it without actually being, having a moment to point that out to you.
Right.
And now
also it would I think it would be out of character for Jason to go off like, oh,
yeah.
But you weren't my dad or whatever, because Jason doesn't see things that way. Even if that's the way he feels, he doesn't see things that way.
Yeah. But see, if now we're going to be exploring Eleanor's mom, and we're going with the idea of kind of what makes Eleanor the way she is, and
And
I think she
we've
does
gotten
have more resentment because we've seen flashbacks before.
Yeah, we've known in the past that she holds resentment for her mother.
Yeah.
And we've gotten the sense that her mother is at least partly responsible for how she ended up.
So yeah, what makes this interesting here is that The Good Place has always been like an exploration of ethics. And it's always found like a different lens, a different means of exploring ethics. And it seems like the current means they're going to be using, or the current way they're going to explore it now is through the parents. Like, how these people have been nurtured into who they are. And that's kind of interesting because I didn't pick up on that until we were discussing this episode. You know, that's where they were headed. But when you think about it now, like this whole episode and then where it's going to be going with Eleanor kind of makes it pretty clear that that's where they're going. So just another fascinating way that The Good Place finds like a new way to explore ethics, a new way to kind of explore territory in the same idea.
The show is brilliant. What can you say?
Yeah. It's always surprising because it'll introduce an idea and then you're like, okay, well, how much life can this have? And then it takes like a twist on it at some point, changes everything up. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I'm exploring this from a completely different angle now. This is interesting in a completely different way. And it could just be jokes because that's the thing is like, there's enough just funny, stupid one-off jokes. Like I said, the Jacksonville taxi was funny enough already, you know, like the antics of Jason's father were funny enough already. You could remove all the ethics from the show and it would still be a really funny show. But by having these ethics in here and by having this kind of greater idea to the story going forward and the way they're constantly able to explore it through new angles just makes the show more than just a comedy. This is why we're discussing this week to week. We don't really do that with comedies just because usually there isn't a lot to dissect and talk about. It's usually just kind of like, oh yeah, this was funny. And there's not much to talk about beyond that. And we've always kind of focused more on like serialized dramas and talking about what they're doing episode to episode, how the story's progressing, what connections they're making. But we're able to do that with this show, even though it's a comedy, which is kind of a first. I don't know, it's not necessarily the first comedy that's had a serialized story, but it's maybe the first of this quality.
Right, exactly.
But that's it then. So that's the end of this week's discussion. We'll be back next week to talk about talk about episode number Y in the in the series, in the Jeremy Bearimy order of things. But until next week, here's what's coming up in the week ahead. So we're recording this a day later. We normally record on Friday, but our schedule is based on starting on Friday and going to Friday. So on Friday, October 26, 2018, Midnight Texas returned to NBC. That's most interesting, not because of the show itself, but because the showrunner of Midnight Texas is the one that's going to be doing the Buffy reboot, or not reboot, but continuation or whatever.
The Buffy whatever.
the new Buffy thing, I'm-a-jig. That's that showrunner. More interestingly, though, is some of the kind of better Halloween shows are coming back. Channel Zero, The Dream Door, came back to Sci-Fi. Channel Zero is their creepypasta anthology series, and The Dream Door is the new one for this season. So that started on Friday. And then Netflix had two hotly anticipated returns or debuts. A return with Castlevania season 2. Season 1 was originally scripted as like a movie, and then through like a myriad of planned iterations, they finally ended up doing it as a 4-episode animated series on Netflix. Season 2 is doubled that length to 8 episodes. I've watched 4 so far. We're going to discuss this at some point on a future podcast. We'll discuss this season. But if you go back into the podcast queue, you can see when we discussed season 1 as well. So, and we both liked season 1, and so it'll be fun to talk about season 2 when we do. But then new to Netflix on Friday is The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which is the adaptation of the comic book of the same name, which itself is a spin-off of Riverdale and basically the kind of darker Archie comic stuff that was coming out.
Yeah, that was coming out like a few years back. I actually don't know how many years back that was now, but yeah, it's they kind of like it was like a rebranding of the brand, because they kind of shifted Archie to like more of a drama, and then they
Mhm.
shifted Sabrina to like a horror comic book. And so this
Yeah.
is an adaptation of that.
So, I mean, technically this takes place in the same universe as Riverdale. I've heard that cast members confirm that it does take place in the same universe as Riverdale.
And this is actually set in the modern day.
Yes.
It's not like people thought it was like a period piece, but like it's actually not. Because I watched the first episode and
I haven't watched it yet, so
they play coy with the period piece because like everything's set up like it looks like it's in the 60s, but then there's like other things where they're like there's like a big thing that says October 26th this year.
yeah.
And but like nobody, it's weird because you're dealing with high schoolers, but like nobody has a cell phone. Nobody even mentions Twitter or Facebook or anything once. But there is a scene where a character does have a laptop. So
they're kind of playing on the timeless kind of angle. They're trying to like not date themselves, basically.
Yeah, they're trying
like it's modern, but they're not dating themselves at the same time.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, that's I'm excited to start watching that. How did you like the first episode?
It was good. It was good. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to watching more.
You just have to see if it's going to be like Riverdale, where the first episode was good and then it fell off a cliff.
Right. Yeah.
Or if it continues to be good.
Or if it continues to be good. That is the thing, right? Because I also had positive feelings about the first episode of Riverdale. But
I'm most excited because Michelle Gomez is in the series. I actually met her when I went to Comic-Con for the website.
And her character is in the show is great, by the way, too.
She's like her teacher.
I think you'll be happy with Michelle Gomez in the show.
Okay,
if you're a Michelle Gomez fan, I think I'll be happy.
I'm looking forward to seeing her character. But that's all Friday, October 26th. So, Sunday, October 28th, 2018, Ray Donovan returns on Showtime. This is a show that's gotten some level of critical acclaim. Not universal, like American Vandal got, but it's gotten a decent amount of critical acclaim, but I've never been into it. I tried watching it and just could not get into it. But it's, Liev Schreiber, who played Sabretooth in the, what's it called? The X-Men.
X-Men Origins.
Yeah.
X-Men Origins, we don't talk about this movie ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
I tried the best thing to try to describe that actor, or explain that actor. That's probably the best movie to bring up for an audience of genre TV fans, you know?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess.
Bad as the movie was, he was good in it, you know?
He was in Scream, wasn't he?
I think so. I think he was in Scream 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think he was in one of the Scream movies, but yeah, that was a long time ago. But yeah, that's Ray Donovan on Showtime. Some people love that. I didn't really get into it.
I was just trying to think of like a movie like people listening to this would be familiar with that wasn't X-Men Origins.
Yeah, I can't think of much else. He's played a lot of smaller roles, which makes it harder to remember.
Yeah, a lot of small roles. It was apparently in... No, wait, that's a different Twilight. Okay.
And then on Wednesday, October 31st, on Halloween, can you believe Halloween's just this Wednesday? It's crazy.
Wow, we're coming up on it already.
But yeah, on Halloween Day, Stand Against Evil returns on IFC. I stopped watching the show not because I wanted to, but because it stopped taping properly on my DVR. And so I missed my episode counts, and then I couldn't find a place to stream it reliably, and that was it. Let it be a lesson to networks and stuff. You need a means for people to find the fucking show, because if they miss an episode or something and it's got a continuing story, well, that's probably it for whoever's watching it, you know? That person, if they can't find an episode, it's not like they're going to go like, okay, well, I'll just miss this story and continue on. No, they'll just stop watching.
They'll just stop watching. Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, if you don't provide me a good way of catching the episodes that I've missed because my DVR made a mistake or something, then I have no means of continuing to watch the show. So that's it for me.
Exactly. That's like my sentiments. Yeah, I'm just gonna, if there's no easy and convenient way for me to watch something, I just won't watch it.
But for those who haven't fallen off That's back on IFC on Halloween. Also, Tell Me a Story debuts on CBS All Access. I can't remember exactly, but I believe it's like a horror anthology series on CBS All Access. So everyone's getting involved in the Halloween spirit with anthology shows. Then on Thursday, November 1st, 2018, Startup returns to Crackle. And on Friday, November 2nd, 2018, Homecoming debuts on Amazon. This is based on a podcast. It's a podcast, but it's a fictional podcast. It's like a story put together in the form of a podcast. But it's being adapted by Sam Esmail, the creator of Mr. Robot. He's directing all of the episodes for Amazon. And then House of Cards returns on Netflix for its final season, absent the sex offender who shall not be named, I guess.
Well, his character is dead this season, so.
But the show's going to continue on without him.
For one season. You should say the show's going to continue on for one season. It's not continuing on beyond this.
Yeah, they're wrapping it up for fans of the show.
Yeah.
Mike Judge Presents Tales from the Tour Bus returns on Cinemax.
Nice.
This is about,
I don't know what it's about, but you said Mike Judge, so I'm sold already.
Yeah, this is like its second season, I think. It's about like roadies on like a country music tour or something. But it's like Mike Judge, think like King of the Hill.
Right. Like Mike Judge. If you watch Mike Judge, if you're familiar with his type of humor, you know where he's going with this.
Yeah.
Especially since, he's really good at writing these sort of like, country music stars. He's good at like writing redneck characters.
Southerners,
Yeah, Southerners, yeah. He's from Texas, so it makes sense.
That's on Friday, November 2nd. The Mike Judge I'm waiting for is him to return for his California series, Silicon Valley.
Yes.
That's what I'm always waiting for. But yeah, so that's what's coming up in the week ahead. Next week, we're going to continue our discussion of The Good Place and more news stories or other stuff. At some point in the near future, you're going to start seeing that we'll talk about The Good Place, but we'll also talk about, one of the Netflix shows or something, meaning Castlevania or Daredevil Season 3, which we're going to try to find in the near future, we're going to find some point in which we can talk about those. But we just have to make sure everyone's caught up and then schedule it. And so it might take a little while. 5
episodes into Daredevil right now.
I just finished it recently, so.
And 1 episode into Sabrina, so.
Don't know if we're going to talk about Sabrina. We might.
Okay. Well, I'm not necessarily watching it for the podcast, but, just in case.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about Castlevania and Daredevil, though.
Yes.
Not on the same podcast, on separate podcasts.
Yeah, that'd be kind of a crowded podcast.
But yeah, that's it. So thank you everybody for listening. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. Will is at Voxel Hero. You can subscribe to the podcast or any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel as well as a plethora of other content. So thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very